So, hello everyone and good morning. This is weird being up here, but I'm grateful to be part of a congregation that allows its members to give sermons, which is very interesting to me. My name is Sara Chang. I'm a white woman with longish, dark brown dyed hair. My pronouns are she and her. I fall into the age bracket of late 30s, early 40s, and I'm wearing a black dress with long sleeves. Let's see, I've been coming to this church for about 5.5 years now, and my husband and daughter Amara have been coming here, and we enjoy it. We feel like it's a pretty welcoming place, so it's been nice. So I'm a second generation Hare Krishna. Both of my parents are disciples of the founder of the Hare Krishna movement. His name is A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Prabhupada is what everyone calls him. My father took his initiation with Prabhupada in February of 73, and my mom in the springtime of 75. My mother grew up in a Roman Catholic family, and my father in a Unitarian family. I remember going to the Unitarian church with my grandma in Chicago, Illinois as a child sometimes, but I would also go to the Hare Krishna or International Society for Krishna Consciousness or ISKCON temple in Chicago, as well as other ISKCON temples across the United States. And at the age of 19, I went to India for a month with my family. And there we visited many holy places. And we even got to go to the foothills of the Himalayan mountains, where I jumped into the Ganges River full sari on. And it was exhilarating and purifying. And I remember it like it was yesterday. So who are the Hare Krishnas? Okay, yeah, there we go. That's actually a picture from 75. My dad is on the front left. He's wearing the white robes, and my mom is kind of crouched over in the right front there. And yeah, so that was in a magazine back in 1975. So we found that. So who are the Hare Krishnas? Maybe you've seen them before. The women, all of different races, Americans dressed in saris. The men in saffron robes with shaved heads. Back in the 60s and 70s, you might run across them in the airport doing book distribution. Or you would also see them dancing and singing the Hare Krishna mantra or the Maha Mantra. This was during a time in America when people were looking to expand their thinking and affect real change in society, and so came the whole hippie movement. The openness of the youth during this time allowed for a broadening of beliefs. The Hare Krishna movement was and is not something born out of nothing. I think, one might look at these people dressed in, their clothing and their chanting and stuff like that, and they might think it's a cult, which is understandable because after all, there were many cults forming around the same time. But the Hare Krishna movement, however, is a monotheistic Hindu organization that has its origin in the 16th century and is based on the ancient Vedas. The Vedas, meaning knowledge, were written in Sanskrit between 1500 and 500 BCE. The Hare Krishna movement originated in Bengal, India, in the 16th century with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who had a profound effect on Vaishnavism. He is the founder of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, which is simply Krishna-centric Hinduism, Vaishnavism. And it places great importance on chanting mantras and love of God. And it was brought to the United States in 1965 by Prabhupada. So what do they believe? They believe that Krishna is the supreme God and that the sound vibration of the Maha Mantra has a direct impact on the soul, and repeatedly chant this to gain the most benefit. Oftentimes they will use mala beads or japa beads, which have 108 beads as is typical. They practice a form of yoga known as bhakti yoga that focuses on devotion to Krishna. Lacto-vegetarianism is advocated as they believe in ahimsa, which is Sanskrit for nonviolence. This applies to actions towards all living beings. It is believed that all beings are part and parcel of God. Ahimsa is also related to the notion that all acts of violence have karmic consequences. There is great respect for cows amongst a large population of Indian Hindus, as well as the Hare Krishna movement, because they view cows as mothers and that they provide their calves with milk and they provide humans with milk. Hare Krishnas, like many other types of Hindus, believe in reincarnation, and the texts that the movement is based on are the Bhagavad Gita and the Bhagavat Purana, also known as the Srimad Bhagavatam. So Srila Prabhupada, or Prabhupada, like I was referring to him as, in 1965, he arrived in the United States, specifically New York Harbor, by way of a cargo ship named Jaladuta. He was a 70-year-old Vaishnav sannyasi dressed in simple cotton robes, otherwise known as a dhoti, an old shawl, and neck beads. He came to spread the message of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the Western world. Prabhupada at this stage in his life had put his focus on translating and more clearly explaining the Vedic knowledge into English. He had already published 3 volumes of the Bhagavatam, which dates back to 500 CE in its original Sanskrit. He was virtually penniless upon arrival to America, and after almost a year of great difficulty, he established the International Society for Krishna Consciousness in 1966. In 1968, Prabhupada went to the UK, where the movement was established with the financial support of George Harrison of the Beatles, including the donation of his manor. It's now called Bhaktivedanta Manor. Olivia Harrison, George's wife, still visits the manor upon occasion and makes sure to be taking care of it. Amara, Alex, my sister, and I had the chance to visit there a while back, and it was really beautiful. It's like in the countryside of north of London. It's lovely. So before George gave the movement some financial support, George Harrison and John Lennon bought an album that Prabhupada made, which is simply called Side A, Side B, and listened to it prior to ever meeting Prabhupada or any of the members of the movement. This is actually the album that my uncle had sent my father in '68, which got him involved in the movement as well, and the record was on green vinyl. The 2 Beatles became largely influenced by the Mahamantra and would go on chanting for hours, but George was the one who really became devoted to Krishna consciousness after this. Prabhupada and George Harrison became close friends, and George held Prabhupada with great esteem and reverence. At one point, while Prabhupada was in London, George asked him if he should move into the temple and shave his head. Prabhupada said emphatically, "No. You have a great gift for the world in your music. Just continue your music and Krishna will be greatly pleased and he will bless you." Then he said, Prabhupada brought out one of his songbooks by the father of Prabhupada's guru. So his name was Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and he gave George Harrison some ideas. So he went over a number of the songs reciting the translations for George. And then soon after this, George Harrison wrote My Sweet Lord. George came daily for a week along with Ravi Shankar to have Prabhupada's darshan, which is, darshan just means like having valuable time where you really connect with somebody. So both Ravi Shankar and Prabhupada were Bengali, and they would talk and laugh together in the typical Bengali way, which is really kind of cute. So Prabhupada was born in 1896 in Kolkata, India, and you wouldn't know it, but at the time, Kolkata was a cultural epicenter second only to London. India was occupied by the British, and Kolkata was the hub. Prabhupada met his spiritual master, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami, in Calcutta in 1922. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, being a prominent religious scholar and founder of 64 Gaudiya Maths, or Vedic institutes in India, liked Prabhupada being that he was an educated young man and convinced him to dedicate his life to teaching Vedic knowledge and spreading it in English. Srila Prabhupada formally became a student and initiated disciple in '33. It might be interesting to note here that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's father was Bhaktivinoda Thakur, who I mentioned earlier about his songbook, and he started actually spreading the Vedic teachings out west by sending copies of his works to Ralph Waldo Emerson in 1880, amongst other people. Prabhupada took his guru's request to heart and embarked on the journey that would eventually lead him to America. Furthermore, Srila Prabhupada taught that each soul is part and parcel of God, and that one could find happiness through simpler, more natural way of life, dedicating one's energy to the service of God and in each other, and God being in each and every person. This view of all beings being part and parcel of God can be seen in the excerpt Sabrina read from Emerson's essay, Nature, when he says, "I am part or particle of God." Ralph Waldo Emerson was a Unitarian minister at the Second Church of Boston and then resigned in '32. It was in this essay that Emerson introduced principles that became recognized as a transcendental philosophy. Emerson wrote, "I owed a magnificent day to the Bhagavad Gita. It was the first of books. It was as if an empire spoke to us, nothing small or unworthy, but large, serene, consistent, the voice of an old intelligence, which in another age and climate had pondered and thus disposed of the same questions which exercise us." Within the 11 years that followed Prabhupada's arrival to the United States, he circled the globe 14 times, bringing the teachings of Bhakti across 6 continents to thousands of people, but now millions of people. With the help of the men and women of all backgrounds who accepted his message, Prabhupada established centers and projects throughout the world. These include temples, eco-friendly farm communities, educational institutions, and what would become the world's largest vegetarian food relief program. These are a bunch of ISKCON temples in India right here. And then you can see some of the deities right there. So Prabhupada authored over 70 volumes of Bhakti Yoga, and his writings have been translated into 76 languages. Srila Prabhupada passed away November 14th, 1977, in the holy town of Vrindavan, surrounded by his disciples. Before he died, Prabhupada took off the ring he wore on his right hand and told his followers, "This is for George, give it to him."
Our second reading this morning is from Walden by Henry David Thoreau. And you have to love Emerson and Thoreau because when they needed a word, they made it up if they had to. In the morning, I bathe my intellect in the stupendous and cosmogonal philosophy of the Bhagavad Gita, since whose composition years of the gods have elapsed, and in comparison with which our modern world and its literature seem puny and trivial. And I doubt if that philosophy is not to be referred to a previous state of existence, so remote is its sublimity from our conceptions. I lay down the book and go to my well for water, and lo, there I meet the servant of the Brahmin, the priest of Brahma and Vishnu and Indra, who still sits in his temple on the Ganges reading the Vedas, or who dwells at the root of a tree with his crust and water jug. I meet his servant, come to draw water for his master, and our buckets, as it were, grate together in the same well. The pure Walden water is mingled with the sacred water of the Ganges.
I realize I did not do this bell ring thing before the first part of the sermon, so I have to do this again. Sorry. So I wanted to speak a little bit about the Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavad Gita is estimated to have been written between the 5th and 3rd century BCE by Vyasa. It can be found in the Mahabharata. The Mahabharata covers the history of the earth from the time of creation in relation to India, and is roughly 10 times the length of the Iliad and the Odyssey combined. Bhagavad Gita's teachings are universal and sublime. It has a message for the peace, freedom, solace, and perfection of all human beings. Lord Krishna originally spoke the Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna at the Battle of Kurukshetra in 3137 BC. And in the course of writing this sermon, I found many of ancient Greek and Roman writings that are consistent with this timeline. On the verge of the great battle, Arjuna is overwhelmed with doubt and unease. He expresses his misgivings to Krishna, his charioteer. Krishna persuades Arjuna to not withdraw, but to do his duty as a warrior and to fight. Arjuna's dilemma is what draws a response from Krishna, which then expands to form the central themes of the Bhagavad Gita. Mahatma Gandhi summarized the Gita's message in one phrase: Nishkima karma, selfless action, work free from any selfish motives. It is in this special sense, whatever path the Gita is presenting at a given time, it remains a manual of karma yoga. It speaks directly to the person who wants to realize God without giving up their own active roles in the world. Everything depends on the state of mind. So action without selfish motive purifies the mind. And Krishna puts this most beautifully in the famous verses of chapter 9. Whatever you do, make it an offering to me. In other words, do it not for personal reward, but out of love of the Lord present in every creature. Whatever you eat, whatever worship you perform, whatever you give, whatever you suffer, everything is to be done and given and endured and enjoyed for the sake of the Lord in all, not for ourselves alone. In the Gita, Krishna repeatedly tells Arjuna, fill your mind with me, focus every thought on me, think of me always, then you will be united with me. And the same injunction was actually given to Moses and reiterated by Muhammad and Jesus. It can be seen as meaning that awareness will be integrated down to the deepest recesses of the unconscious. This is what the significance of yoga is, to control the focus of the mind. Krishna asserts that every person seeking satisfaction in the world outside, pleasure, profit, prestige, power, is actually really only looking for God. As they approach me, so I receive them. All paths, Arjuna, lead to me. My father loves a part in the Gita when Krishna says, "To those who are constantly devoted to serving me with love, I give the understanding by which they can come to me." And my brother's favorite is in chapter 18, verse 66. "Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all sinful reactions. Do not fear." I, of course, love that one too. And when the Gita is practiced, it becomes clear what the struggle the Bhagavad Gita is concerned with is the struggle for self-mastery. It was brilliant of Vyasa to take the whole of the Mahabharata epic and see it as a metaphor for the constant war between the forces of darkness and light in every human heart. If you look at it this way, Arjuna becomes everyone, asking the Lord Sri Krishna the perennial questions about life and death. So reading it this way, it becomes not an external dialogue, but an internal one, held between the ordinary human full of questions about the meaning of life and our deepest self. The deepest self is divine. Reincarnation is something Krishna talks with Arjuna about. He says, as the embodied soul continuously passes in this body from youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at death. The body is mortal, but that which dwells in the body is immortal and immeasurable. You were never born, you will never die. You have never changed, you can never change. Unborn, eternal, immutable, immemorial, you do not die when the body dies. Realizing that which is indestructible, eternal, unborn, and unchanging, how can you slay or cause to slay? As one abandons worn-out clothes and acquires new one, so when the body is worn out, a new one is acquired by the self, who lives within. The self cannot be pierced by weapons or burned by fire. Water cannot wet it, nor can wind dry it. The self cannot be pierced or burned, made wet or dry. It is everlasting and infinite, standing on the motionless foundations of eternity. These very powerful words from Krishna remind me so much of one of my favorite poems of all time by Emily Bronte. It's called "No Coward Soul Is Mine." No coward soul is mine, no trembler in the world's storm-troubled sphere. I see heaven's glory shine, and faith shines equal, arming me from fear. O God within my breast, almighty ever-present deity, life that in me hast rest, as I undying life have power in thee. Vain are the thousand creeds that move men's hearts, unutterably vain, worthless as withered weeds, or idlest froth amid the boundless main. To waken doubt in one, holding so fast by thy infinity, so surely anchored on the steadfast rock of immortality. With wide embracing love, thy spirit animates eternal years, pervades and broods above, changes, sustains, dissolves, creates, and rears. Though earth and moon were gone, and suns and universes ceased to be, and thou wert left alone, every existence would exist in thee. There is not room for death, nor atom that his might could render void, since thou art being and breath, and what thou art may never be destroyed. And I would like to share a mantra that I chant every day, and so does my daughter with me. It's called the Gayatri Mantra. It's a universal prayer. This sacred mantra is mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita and the Upanishads. It can be found in the Rig Veda, which was written between 1500 and 1000 BCE. It is also cited in the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. Lord Krishna is worshipped with the Gayatri Mantra. Therein it is written that the vibration of the song from Krishna's flute created the Gayatri Mantra. It is believed to have many benefits, removing negativity, calming, reducing stress. There are obviously a few interpretations of it because it was written in Sanskrit, so the translations differ a little bit. I found three that I kind of like. So one of them is, Divine Mother, let your radiant light permeate all facets of our existence. Another is, we meditate on the glory of that being who has produced the universe. May she enlighten our minds. Lastly, another one is, we meditate on the most adored Supreme Lord, the Creator, whose effulgence or divine light illumines all realms, physical, mental, and spiritual. It goes like this. Om Bhur Bhuva Suvaha Tat Savitur Varenyam Bargo Devasya Dhimahi Dio Yo Na Prachodayat. Now we are going to please rise in body or spirit to sing together the closing hymn, number